So we've come quite a distance now in terms of our discussion around, credential management and or credentials and why it's so important to not just use passwords any longer. I think we've established as well that, with certificates that we have in all sorts of other things, these digital certificates and cryptography should also really be applied. I think it just makes sense to say that it should be applied on how we as users actually logs into systems, access data, access different solutions that runs in our environment, etc. So for me, the challenge would really be around how do we manage this mass of information that now we get bombarded with? Because, it's not just a simple password that we need to change any longer for a person. It really is this entire credentials of this person that they would have. We're talking about certificates, we're talking about PKI, we're talking about different users, different applications that they can or cannot access. Etc., etc., etc. People that migrate, people that move from different position or from one position into a different position, people that joins, people that leave. So it becomes a job on its own and a nightmare on its own if you don't manage it correctly. So I know and understand in your environment, you guys have also already thought about these things. You've sorted it out. So maybe just talk us through that, through the need for credential management then as well, please.
And it is a really important point. So it's if you can't trust the credential you issue, can't trust the system that's issued the credential, you can't end up trusting that end credential. So I think this really comes down to three factors that all work together. The first one is integration. So any system that's going to come in and manage your credentials, manage the delivery of them to your employees and make sure that the right people get the right credentials, has to integrate. It has to work with what you've already got. And that comes down to working with the certificate authority, Entrust, PrimeKey, Microsoft, we don't mind. You then have to communicate with the device. So that could be a smart card or a mobile phone or a virtual card, such as Windows Hello for Business, for example. So you need to communicate with those. You typically need to talk to a source of user data. That could be a directory, or it could be an identity and access management system, such as ForgeRock, SailPoint, Ping, Okta, etc. And you have to make sure all these systems work together. You may be talking to smart card printers. You may be talking to a hardware security module to secure the keys and make sure that the communication between all these systems is secure. So you have to have that system in there that connects to all the different parts of your environment without having to change that. So it really has to work with what's there. So that's the first one. The second is the policy. So it's important an organization controls who gets which credentials. So for example, if they have a new employee on board, how do I make sure as part of that HR onboarding process, that employee gets the right credentials to the right system? If I have a contractor or if I have a third-party supplier, how do I make sure that they get the right system access? And you may have different rules for different people. So employers may have full access into the systems. Contractors may just be able to access some systems. Financial people may also use signed emails. So may need completely different credentials. It may be that you need to authorize some credentials at a higher level. So for example, if you're issuing credentials to a system administrator who can go in and switch on or off your firewalls, you really want to be sure that they're the right people before you do that. So you may want to have witnesses present to do that. So there's all these policies and rules, and tied up in that, very importantly, is audit. So if people come in and audit your company for GDPR or POPI, for example, they want to say, okay, show me how you're managing who can access your systems. So that system needs to be able to show you, these are the people with active credentials, these are when they expire, this is when it was revoked, etc. So you've got that visibility of who can access your systems. And the final one is lifecycle management. So this is credentials will be issued, but as you mentioned earlier, Herman, people leave organizations. What you don't want to do is to have somebody leave and their credentials still be valid a week later, because they'll come in and do damage. So you need to make sure that as their account is disabled in the directory or SailPoint says this person's no longer valid, your credential management system can revoke their smart card, their virtual card, their mobile ID. So all of that life cycle management, maintaining the status of that credential is really, really important.
Okay, you mentioned something now which I haven't even thought of, and that is really if with the POPI that's coming in, the regulator can potentially come in and ask questions around how do you protect the data.
Yeah.
So this is a very nice way of actually then taking the regulator or the person that is the auditor and take them through the process and being able to actually show them exactly how you manage the life cycle of an employee or the credentials of an employee in this entire life cycle where this person sits. Is it possible to, how would they as an employee manage forgotten passwords as an example, credentials as an example,
Yeah.
or how do you forget an employee once they've left the organization? Because you're quite right, I think that's probably one of the biggest problems in any organization is an employee that has left the organization, and you will find months down the line where this employee's credentials is still actually active and valid, and that in itself is a big problem. So things like revocation. How do you revoke a person's information or their accounts if they move up or move down or move sideways? Because it's not just simply activating a person's account and then forgetting about it. So many times we've also found that where a person was appointed in one position, that person was now redistributed to another position, or they moved up in life, and all of a sudden you're sitting with a person, a manager that has got credentials that they used before, that was never revoked when they moved up, and therefore now they're sitting with all this power, if I can call it that, through the different credentials that they have, and or accesses that they have. And it's always a problem for any organization to, how do you manage that? So if there's an easier, seamless, cleaner way of doing things, really, I think that adds the additional benefit over and above the fact that you have better control over your employees and what they access. You have also the benefit of migrating users in and out of the system seamlessly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that really is what my company, Intercede, has been, our company, I don't own it, I just work there, just to be clear. So Intercede have been doing for the last 20 years with our MyID software. So that's, the bottom line is credentials need managing. If they just go out there and they're unmanaged, you can't trust them. You don't know who's got them. You don't know if they're still valid. You can't deal with them expiring. So a credential management system is all about making sure that the right people have the right credentials and they can access the systems they need to do so. And that's really what our MyID software is all about. And in summary, it's about how do I deploy and manage these credentials simply and at scale. It's probably worth just touching on an actual real world use case of how it's used to help people understand that. So the example we're just looking at the moment happens to be a bank. They're a European bank. They're based in 3 countries, got about 27,000 users, over about 160 branches. And they use MyID, in this case, to connect to a source of user data. So that's the directory where the user information comes from. And back to your revocation, if the user account is cancelled in the directory, MyID will automatically spot that and automatically revoke their credentials. So within seconds, they can no longer access systems. We also have a certificate authority here. So that's the software that actually issues the certificates, but we're sat in front of it, making sure the right people get the right certificates. We have that hardware security module, so that encrypts sensitive data both in transit and in the MyID database. And that's data such as card keys and private keys and these sorts of things. So we make sure that everything is very secure. So for example, if you need to read secure emails, you need to have the same key on different devices to do that on your smart card and on your phone, for example. So we use that to help protect that data as we're moving it between systems in a highly secure manner. The most important piece is probably on the right-hand side here, where we have the people who actually use the system. So we have the administrators. back to my previous slides of policy. These are the people who set the policy up. Who's allowed to get what credentials? People in these areas get these credentials. These people in this country can only manage people in their own country. This person down at a branch level can provide help desk services to people within their particular region, for example. So this tends to be a one-off activity. You set your policies up. And my idea is very much about how do I configure the system to meet my business process, as opposed to having to change your business process to meet the system. That's quite a big deal. So that's the administrators. The operators are the people who use the system day to day to issue credentials. So a new employee starts, I issue them a credential. I may need to go review something. If we've had an employee that's suspected, I need to look at who issued them the credential, what could it do, etc., etc. So all of that full audit. So they're providing help desk facilities to people on a day-by-day basis. And then we have the end users themselves. So self-service is a very big factor when it comes to cost reduction here. So if you can allow end users to help themselves in a simple manner, you don't have to have a huge expensive help desk sat there helping those end users out. So that's important too. So those end users, for example, may do things such as collect updates to their credential. So let's say I have a certificate that's about to expire. On their desktop, my ID would pop up and say, hey, Alan, your certificate's about to expire. Do you want to collect a new one now? And you'd say, no, I'm just about to go into a meeting. And then the next day it'll pop up and tell you again. You say yes and collect it. And those operators will be able to say who's collected it, who's still outstanding, who's got a problem, etc. So those end users can do that at their own desktop. This particular example, they've started out rolling out smart cards and virtual smart cards, depending on the role of the people. Back in the days when we were all in offices, they tended to have physical cards at desktops and virtual cards for people traveling with laptops. Now we're more remote. They're extending the use of virtual cards. And they're also looking to roll out mobile devices as well. So we can push certificates into MDMs, such as AirWatch and Microsoft Intune, for example, if you need secure access or read secure email. We have customers who use the mobile phones for accessing secure Wi-Fi, where we're just pushing them directly to the device. So they're looking at extending that. Well, now they've seen the benefits of physical cards and virtual cards on, a lot of business these days is on the mobile. How can I do that from the mobile device as well? So it's just an example of typically a combination of the integration, so the touch points into the back-end systems, the certificate authority, the directory, the policy setting, so that administrator is the person or people setting these are the rules around credential management, and then the actual lifecycle management, which is a combination of the operator and the end user actually issuing and managing those credentials.
Well, you know what, there's two big things that I can take away from here. First of all is what you said is that the company doesn't need to change their systems. The solution really sits in the middle and it manages all the credentials for everything. So it's really almost plugging it in the middle, and the rest would still run as it is intended to, which I think is a big benefit, so that you don't have to spend time and effort and energy in redeploying, redeveloping, rechanging your environment as a company simply just to install the solution. I think that for me is a big bonus. The second thing I also take away from this discussion is really that the transportation or the transportability of the solution. You mentioned mobile devices, etc., and that's notoriously always been a very difficult environment to get right, to run the solutions on properly. And I do think, with the way things are going right now, people starting to work more and more from home, away from the office, people's always been traveling, those types of things, they need this type of environment on their mobile devices. So if that is achievable, I think that's the second big benefit for me as well from the solution, is that it basically runs anywhere and everywhere. So I think for an organization looking at the solution, over and above the security is also the ease of use, the ease of integration and managing their users through the solution. Makes sense. Thank you very much. I think we've spoken quite a lot, and there's been a lot of things that we actually breathed in the air a bit. I think there's a whole lot of opportunities, and people that would listen into this discussion would really understand that this is absolutely a solution that one can look at. So maybe in summary, what are the things that you would consider in mentioning again?
Okay, so what are the most important things for somebody to consider? Let's see if I can summarize them as three. So the first one I'd say is proven. If you're going to invest in a system to improve your security, it's got to work. You can't put money into something that is just not going to work and not secure you. So I would look for things that have been actually tried and tested in the real world, not just on some paid-for marketing survey or some shiny website, but things that have been deployed in organizations like me out there in the real world at scale, securing real things. That is number one, I think. And that's not just from a security perspective, proven security, but from the reality is some of this stuff's quite difficult, and the longer a system's been out there and it's being used, the more likely it's going to have that level of flexibility and maturity to do what you want, to do what you need. So that's the first one, that proven one. The second one is a point, we both mentioned this, is the importance of that ease of use and coming down to the end user. So it has to be a system that's user focused. PKI, be it on a smart card with a simple PIN, or be it on a mobile device with Face ID or Touch ID, actually is one of the few security solutions that has the ability to make an end user's life better. You can, with this, get rid of the password. Yes, that improves your security, but as a user, you no longer have to have that every 3 months. I've got to change my password. What did I use last time? I can't remember it anymore. I end up writing it down. All of that pain, which is horrible. I then forget it. I ring the help desk. There's a cost. All of that can go away because something like a PIN doesn't actually travel over the network. All it does is unlock access to that private key locally. It can be simple, and it doesn't have to be changed all the time. So that is a way more secure way of doing it, and that allows you to have something that actually makes the end user's life better. So that user focused is important, both from a day-to-day usage of it and how do I manage it. So self-service applications to help the users through processes. So that's really important. And probably the third one I'd say is technology independence. So don't buy something that locks you in to one particular vendor or technology only, and you can never change from it. So years ago, when FIPS 201 in the US started out, it was a smart card, and that was it. And that's all you could use as your identity. It then moved on to support mobile as well. The next version coming out will also move on to support FIDO. So we've been making sure our product also does that. So we have customers today using smart cards, virtual smart cards, mobile ID, iOS, Android, USB keys, we don't care. They've swapped one CA to another CA partway through, that's fine. And they're starting to investigate Windows Hello for Business and FIDO at the moment. So it's important that that technology independence gives you a wide range of choice for today, but it also is going to be there to support you as you move forward tomorrow. So I don't know how we'll all be authenticating in 5 years' time, but I do know that my ID will support that because that's what our customers are demanding. So those three things really, the proven security, user-focused, and technology independence.
Excellent, thank you. So guys, there you've got it. I think we've said enough. The product, just once again, if you really interested and you would like to know a bit more, it's called Intercede My ID. Alan, Storey, thank you very much for sharing with us. I think it's been quite insightful, and hopefully I think people will start to understand that this is the next step in ensuring that we as an entity or a company remain safe, that our people remain safe, and that we enable our people to traverse safely through the systems by applying something like PKI and cryptography to ensure that who is allowed into the system is really the ones that should be there. So thank you very much for joining us and chatting to us. So my name, Herman Kriel, crypto, cybersecurity. responsible for crypto, amongst other things. Guys, please reach out to us. Let's talk about the product. Brilliant product, and we can definitely help you with your environment. Thanks again.
Thank you, Herman.
Bye then.